It's Daisy. Today I'll be reading my subscribers' scary stories. So if you guys are interested, grab your snacks, grab your cobija, and let's get straight into it. Hey Daisy, to preface the story, I should say that I grew up in a super religious household. I was raised Pentecostal. You know, the church folks that speak in tongues, fall back when the Holy Spirit touches them, and scream and shout during church services. As such, my mom has always been really into the angels and demons facet of Christianity. I'm in grad school and the fall semester is my favorite time of the year. By that, I mean that the August to December months are my absolute favorite of the year. The weather cools down, the leaves change, and everything feels cozy. I made a commitment to myself long ago that no matter what, I would try my hardest to be present and enjoy my favorite months. So there I was, enjoying my November, going to school, working, and gorging myself on every pumpkin spice flavored thing imaginable, when something stopped me dead in my tracks. I don't know what happened, but something changed from day to night. All of a sudden, I couldn't focus on my schoolwork whatsoever. I had this disgusting headache that was only on my forehead, right in between my eyebrows. And I felt this overwhelmingly heavy feeling that I can only describe as being the absolute worst lethargy I've ever felt in my life. As I tried to fall asleep at night, I physically couldn't. I would sleep for a handful of minutes and wake up with that pressure on my forehead, feeling even stronger. Somehow, I managed to power through the next few days when suddenly a random conversation with my brother brought me back to reality. I was sitting at my desk trying to finish a discussion post for the week when my brother came in asking me if he could nap on my bed. I agreed, asking him what was wrong with his bed. He was quiet for a few moments before finally responding, "I don't know. I just haven't been able to sleep lately." Not thinking anything of his reply, I echoed his sentiments. I submitted my homework and out of pure exhaustion and frustration, laid on my bed next to my brother. He was still awake and could see something was bothering me, so he asked me what was wrong. Through an exasperated sigh, I tell him that I've been feeling off all week long and that I'm beyond tired and weak for no apparent reason. He shoots up from the bed and widens his eye before exclaiming, "Me too!" I didn't reply much as I don't think my brain registered what he said. But looking back on it, something was festering in my house. Later that night, I was at the grocery store with my mom and brother. By that point, I was beyond checked out. I was mindlessly holding onto the shopping cart while following my mom around the fluorescent aisles of the store. I felt awful, exhausted, and weak. Couldn't think properly, and I felt like someone was shoving a sharp tool through my forehead and into my brain on a loop. After we left the store, my mom offered to get us dinner at a local burger joint a few minutes away. My brother and I weren't hungry, so only my mom ordered. And while waiting in the drive-thru line, I mentioned to her that my brother and I had both been having a bad week. She peeled her eyes from the menu to look at me dead in my eyes. "What do you mean?" I tell her how I've been feeling for the past few days, and my brother jumps in to share how he's feeling. That's when I was taken aback. He described something different than I did. He said that for the past few nights, something kept appearing in his dreams. He said he wasn't sure if it was evil, but he knew it wasn't pleasant. He said that all week, every time he'd close his eyes, he'd feel that presence almost tormenting him. I got an uneasy feeling in my stomach as my mom replied, "I'm sorry, that's my fault. I think I opened a window and I've been trying to close it." The ride home after the restaurant was quiet. Neither one of us asked my mom for details. Unfortunately, this has happened many times before. I said in the beginning that my mom has an interest in angels and demons, and she's often taken giant research sessions into a topic that never ends up with a good result. Something my brother and I have learned with all of this is not to ask questions. We pulled into our driveway, and between the three of us, collected all the groceries and food and headed inside the house. I unlocked the door and went in first. I stumbled through the dark hallway before setting the groceries down on the kitchen table and turning on the kitchen lights. Something felt and looked wrong. The air inside my house felt unbelievably dark, practically oppressive. Standing in my kitchen felt wrong, like I was violating some unspoken rule. My mom and brother hurried in after me, and they immediately went quiet and stared into the living room. I turned around to see a dense, gray cloud on the ceiling of my house. Everywhere I looked, I saw this thick haze. I rubbed my eyes, thinking my contacts must be dry or warping my vision somehow, but every time I blinked, the cloud didn't move. We were quiet, and the more I registered what was happening, the worse I felt. I looked at my mom and brother, and we all had the same blank expression, only with our eyebrows involuntarily furrowed. My mom ran to her room while calling me to follow. I didn't want to go into her room and see what she was researching, but something made me follow her. I wasn't in control of my body. I was walking, but my steps hitting the floor didn't register in my brain. I felt like my body was made out of air. I made it to her room, and the thick cloud must have covered half the space. I wanted to throw up. I never felt such an insane amount of dread all at once. I could vaguely hear her apologizing as she shuffled through some papers and flipped the pages of a thick book. She showed me a few things that had sigils and symbols covering every inch of the pages. There were pages everywhere on her bed and floor. I couldn't stomach it anymore. I just looked at her and didn't say anything. I walked away from her room and returned to my room. All I remember is my body floating downwards onto my bed and finally being able to find some sleep. The following day, everything and everyone was okay. Things went back to normal that next day. I'm not sure what my mom was trying to do, nor do I care to ask, but I'm thankful she could close the window she opened. I had a stern talk with her a few days later and told her that she needed to stop messing around with that stuff. She reluctantly agreed, but I doubt she'll listen to me. Funnily enough, this hasn't even been the worst experience. She used to be a preacher when I was younger, and my goodness, the things I've seen are insane. I'm not religious that much myself anymore, but I've always stood by this motto. When it comes to supernatural and spiritual stuff, they can't if you don't let them. Anyways, please stay safe, and I'm sending you lots of virtual pumpkin spice and cream cheese muffins. Melvin. Hi Daisy, my name is Katie. So this story I'm about to tell you happened at a one-bedroom apartment my husband and I used to live in with our 8-year-old, who was 4 years old at the time. I apologize if my story is long, but as I recall, you love long stories, so I will give you about 4 stories. We lived next to one other unit. Our unit was so small, you could tell that it was an old unit because all of the cabinets and flooring were pretty old looking. I've always been told that when you have doorways that align with each other, it's a passage, sort of like a portal for the spiritual realm to travel through. I'm not too sure how true that is, but things that happened in this place made me sure of it. With the way our back and front door was set up, they were aligned across each other perfectly. So if you were to walk in our front door, which was the door you would access to get to the courtyard, when you would walk in our place, you would see the back door right across the front door. The back door just led to our alley and where we parked our cars. Anyways, as I was getting ready to tuck her in, my husband told me that he was going to take the trash out. As I was tucking her in, I felt like someone was behind me. Mind you, I was facing towards the window of my room with my back facing towards my room door, which was just my hallway. The place was so old that even if you barely moved our room door, you could hear a little creak. So, as I was laying there, I felt like someone was behind me. I thought it was my husband. I called out, "Babe," and no answer. I thought maybe he already came back from throwing out the trash and getting the mail. But it was quiet. All of a sudden, my daughter tells me, "Mom, I see someone behind you." And girl, when she said that, I shit bricks. And as much as I knew that she was telling the truth, I kept trying to tell her it was nothing because I was scared as heck myself. But I knew for a fact that she did see something because I believe little kids can see stuff, and this wasn't the first time she mentioned she had seen something in this place. I even turned around and saw nothing, which gave me even more chills because I remember hearing the door creak as if someone was standing in the doorway. When my husband came back, I asked him if he was in the house 5 minutes ago. He replied, "No, I just came back." And that gave me even more chills. Of course, I went to bed like it was nothing, but it was still on my mind as I was going to sleep. Another encounter in that same apartment, I was tucking my daughter in again, but this time my husband was in the living room watching TV, which, by the way, wasn't that far from my room since the apartment was small. As I was laying there tucking in my daughter, who was only 3 at the time, we were just laying there and kind of just talking to each other. As we were talking, out of nowhere, my daughter tells me, "Mom, I see a monster in the closet making faces at me." And that gave me chills right away. I already knew she was most likely telling the truth. And of course, what do? I turn to look at the closet, but I see nothing. So I tried to just tell her to go to sleep and that I'm here to protect her so nothing will happen. So she falls asleep shortly after. But I'm laying there thinking to myself, like, what face did she see? What kind of monster? After thinking to myself, and with my daughter being asleep, I just went back to the living room to finish watching TV with my husband. Now, I was going to tell my husband, but my husband is a kind of person that doesn't like to hear about anything paranormal because he's a firm believer of what you think about, you bring about. So, of course, I go back to the living room like I didn't just hear my daughter say what she said. LOL. So okay, by now you're probably wondering, girl, why didn't you just leave? LOL. Rent was too good at the time for what we had and where we are in, which is California, so we couldn't complain, especially when I hadn't seen anything yet. But eventually, we did move out. So this story is about me taking a day off from work, so it was just me at home by myself. I was trying to do some self-care because, you know, we all need that once in a while, even if that means taking a day off from work. I had just got off the phone with my husband since he was on his lunch break and I was getting ready to eat myself. I was warming up some food in the microwave, and as I was sitting there at my kitchen table, I was scrolling through my phone. All of a sudden, I hear a light whisper. I didn't think too much of it because honestly, I thought it was the fridge making noise, so I didn't think twice. A couple minutes passed by and I hear it again. And now I'm sitting, really thinking to myself like, that was the fridge, right? So I tried to ignore it and go on scrolling. Then I heard another whisper, but this time it was closer to my ear. And girl, When I tell you, I grabbed my keys so fast and went out the back door to my car. I left so fast, I didn't even put shoes on. As I drove away, I called my husband and went to go park on the street right outside of my alley, and was on the phone with my husband explaining to him what just happened. He asked me, well, what are you going to do? Just sit outside until I get home? And I said, hell yes. But then eventually an hour passed and I was like, oh, I'll just go back. So I went back and luckily I didn't hear anything else. So this next encounter is when I saw something myself. It was just another night on a weekday. My husband wanted to go to bed early, so he told me he was going to see me in bed. And usually I don't like to sit in the living room alone to watch TV at night. I don't know why I feel that way, but I've always been that way, and it's only at night. So this time, of course, I decided to just stay up a little longer and stay in our living room to watch TV while my daughter and husband went to bed. The way my living room is set up is like this, where I was sitting in the living room on the couch against the wall directly across from the TV, which was next to the hallway leading to my bathroom and bedroom. My bedroom was the first door to the right, and the bathroom was at the end of my hallway on the left. So where I'm sitting on the couch, you can see the bathroom door perfectly. Everything was normal. I was sitting there watching TV. 10 minutes had passed by, where everything was fine. Then, out of the corner of my eye, where the bathroom door was, I had seen a shadow of something, like peeking out the door, then going back behind the door, then again out the door. So it looked like someone was looking, hiding, then looking and hiding. I thought I was tripping, so I did what you would see in movies. Rubbed my eyes and looked, and I didn't see anything. But at that moment, I was already on edge, like, what the hell did I just see? So I tried to let it go and kept watching TV. Then I saw it one more time and I said, nope, forget this. I turned everything off and went to bed, and let me tell you, it was so hard to fall asleep because out of all of the times my daughter told me she saw something, I finally saw it myself. I couldn't see the face. It was like a silhouette of a person, but I knew it was something. After this day, that's when I would hear scratching noises outside my bedroom window around 10-11 p.m. It sounded like someone was sweeping the floor, but also dragging their feet at the same time. It was like a weird pattern in the noise. It wasn't like one long drag. It sounded like someone was sweeping and then they would stop and then it would start again, but then it sounded like feet dragging. Anyways, I didn't look out the window to find out, but I knew this place was definitely haunted. Shortly after, we moved out and we went to stay with my in-laws. Till this day, I don't know what my daughter saw exactly, and I don't know exactly what that noise was outside my bedroom window. I mean, come on, no one would really be outside at 10-11 p.m. sleeping or just dragging their feet. Anyways, that was it. I hope you enjoyed my stories. I have more to tell, but we'll send in another email when I get the chance. XOXO, Katie. Hi Daisy, I hope you find this well. I hesitated to send this in because I've never spoken about this to anyone in my family except my mother and brother, and it's only come up twice. I was about 9 and my brother was 7. My parents moved us to Brooklyn. There were many strange things happening to my parents. It was believed that a brujo had cursed my father. My mother did not believe in brujos, however, my father did. This curse was apparently done by a niece of my father's and her boyfriend at that time. After this, my father lost his job he'd been with for more than 5 years. He was not well mentally, since this curse was to make him go insane and never work again. He didn't want to look for work. My mom had to work to support us. One day we got home and my father had given our furniture away, sent the rest of our belongings to Puerto Rico. We were left with nothing. No beds, no clothes, nothing except the food in the house. This was not like my father. He'd always supported us and was always responsible. My mother's sister, her husband, and 3 kids lived in Puerto Rico at this time. They were going through worse matters than us, but we were not aware of it. We moved to an apartment that was on the 4th floor of a building. There was another family with 2 children, a brother and a sister, who lived above us. Well, coming home from school, they would see us and start trouble, and we'd end up arguing. This was an everyday occurrence. On the weekends, they would knock on our door and run away. We'd come to the door and no one was there. However, we would hear the laughter, running footsteps, and the door to their apartment slam shut. So we knew the kids were at it again. Well, one night, as my mom, dad, my brother, and I were watching TV, we heard loud knocks on our door. Before she could say anything, my brother and I ran to the door to see who it was. We asked, "Who is it?" but no one answered. We opened the door and no one was there. My brother and I go back and we tell my mom that no one was there. But again, there was another loud knock at the door. This time, my mom goes to the door with us, opens the door, and no one. My brother yells, "You better stop knocking on our door or else." Thinking it was the kids from the upstairs, we went back to watching TV, but then there was a loud knock at the door again. This time, my mother said to ignore it, but the knock at the door would not stop, and it was getting louder. My mother rushed to the door, and we followed, but again, no one. The hallway was silent. No laughters, no footsteps, no door slamming. Well, we returned to watching TV in our bedroom and settled in for bed when we see our sheer curtains to our bedroom door swift upward as if someone was standing in the doorway, lifting up the curtain. This was not like the wind blowing it away from the door, but as if someone standing there lifted those curtains. I was so scared, my brother and I started screaming. We startled my dad, who had been sleeping this whole time. Seconds after this happened, my aunt from Puerto Rico called to say her husband took his own life in his home. My grandmother thinks he came to say goodbye to us since he was very close to my father. My father insisted that my mother accompany him to a reading because he wasn't getting better and he was thinking bad thoughts. When they did his reading, my father was told that my father's niece and boyfriend prepared something so that they could remove my father from his job and her boyfriend could be the replacement. My father was also informed that this was to take years, so he wouldn't find work, and eventually, from the distress and the anxiety, he would get depressed and take his own life. My father recovered through the grace of God, but it was not easy. It took a lot of mental work. And after that, I've never experienced anything like it again. And I hope I never will, because these things do exist. Thanks, Medium. Hi Daisy, my name is Nick, and I live in a small town in California. I've had quite a few paranormal experiences, but for now, I'm going to tell you about some experiences at a haunted apartment that I used to live with my husband and eventually my 2 roommates, who are also a couple. We no longer live there, and we moved to a different location, thankfully. My husband and I first moved to a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in our early 20s before we got married. Our first few months were uneventful until our first roommate, Angel, moved in with us. He's one of those people who attract the paranormal and is relatively sensitive to it. Something had unfortunately followed him to our apartment when he moved in with us. After a couple of weeks of Angel settling into the spare bedroom, weird stuff started happening. I would wake up to use the bathroom at 2 or 3 in the morning. When I would walk into the small hallway and stand in front of the bathroom door to open it, I would feel something looking at me from the pitch darkness of the dining room, living room across the hall. I refused to look. I would use the bathroom and scurry back to my bedroom and close the door. But I was not the only person to feel this. Some of our friends that would stay the night would feel it or see a shadow standing in the hallway when everyone in the apartment was asleep. There were also times where I would be washing the dishes or watching TV and I would see a black blur running from the corner of my vision and I would get goosebumps and just try to simply ignore it. Some days I would get so uneasy, especially going past Angel's room in the hallway when I would be home alone. I always closed his room door out of fear that something was watching me from the doorway. Eventually, we found out what was living with us at the apartment, and it was unfortunately not human, and Angel was the poor soul who had to see it. Angel was in his room one night after a long day of work. He woke up sweaty in the middle of the night. His room was very dark. The only source of light was his computer charging cable that glowed a faint blue in the darkness of his floor. Angel turned over on his left side toward the door and closet. He got an uneasy feeling and looked up. There, in the corner of the dark bedroom on the ceiling, he saw what looked like a very bony, skinny thing with long black thinning hair and a white dress gripping the walls with its grotesque long fingers. Eyes were sunken in and greedy, staring down at him. It had a nasty grin on its twisted face. It was staring at him for what felt like an eternity until he blinked and it slowly faded away into the darkness. The next morning, Angel told my husband and I what happened. My husband was rather skeptical, brushing it off. I was very uneasy knowing I wasn't just feeling and seeing things. There was actually something in the apartment. Angel asked if I would bless his room and sage it in fear of going to sleep. So I prepared myself during the week and performed the cleansings along with my husband, who didn't seem to worry that much. Nothing bothered Angel afterwards, and his stay was relatively peaceful. After the cleansing, I, for whatever reason, became sensitive. I would get lots of nightmares and night terrors from it, but I will send those stories in for another time. So that was it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. A big thank you to everyone that sent in their stories. As always, thank you guys so much. But if you have a scary story that you like to share on my channel, please feel free to send it in at daisyspooks@gmail.com. All that information will be down below. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys all in my next one. Bye. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Daisy. Today I'll be reading my subscribers' spooky paranormal stories. So if you guys are interested, grab your snacks, grab your cobija, and let's get straight into it. Hi Daisy, my name is Anena. I have many real paranormal stories, but I'll start with these first. When I was in middle school, we lived in these apartments called Crossway in Arlington, Texas. Now, to give you a little information that is later important in this story, is that since we moved in, my sister completely changed. At the time, she was 16 and I was 12. My sister was always very nice, but after just moving in, she started acting crazy, sneaking out and going to random guys' houses, fighting with my mom, and not long after, she started dating this guy who was just a big no. He didn't believe in God and thought that the devil was our savior. Well anyways, one day, it was around 6 p.m. It was dark out and raining hard. My sister and I were home alone, and I had just finished washing dishes and she was drying them. I was sitting in a chair at the kitchen table talking and laughing with her. While we were laughing, a big bang came from the window above the sink. We heard, "Ábreme la puerta," open the door, while the banging continued, and I saw what looked like a silhouette of a man. I screamed to my sister, "Oh crap, it's Omar," my stepdad. My sister just stood there looking at the window. She didn't move. I rolled my eyes and quickly opened the laundry door from the kitchen and the other door leading to the closed porch, and there was no one. I looked up at the front door and the door had the lock on it. I literally felt my heart drop. I went back to the kitchen and my sister was still standing there, looking at the window. I'm thinking, what the heck is she doing? I turned her around and she had a blank look on her face. At this point, I didn't even know what to do. Like, what just happened? I left her in the kitchen and went to our room. I was so scared because she wasn't acting normal. After a couple of minutes, I went to the living room and she was sitting on the couch, just looking straight at nothing. I sneaked back to my room so she wouldn't see me. I didn't know what was happening to her. Minutes later, my mom called to give me a heads up that she was coming home. When she got home, I told her what happened, and all she said was, "Eso es lo que te pasa por andar mirando esas películas de terror." She did not believe me. I didn't tell her about my sister acting weird, because to be honest, I was scared of my sister. Well, weeks later, my mom and I were in the laundry room. I was taking out the clothes from the washer and handing them to her to put in the dryer, when all of a sudden, the doorknob started to shake and move side to side. My mom and I just looked at each other. She laughed and said, "Ay, Omar, ya no estés jugando." She grabbed the knob and held it hard till it finally stopped shaking. She opened the door, but there was no one. Since then, my mom started to believe me. A lot of paranormal stuff started happening after that, and mostly involving my sister. A couple weeks later, I was in the living room playing with my baby brother on the floor. My brother starts laughing and points at the window and says, "Papi, ya llegó papi." I look and see just the sight of a man walking to the laundry door. I got up and I went to open the door, but when I opened it, once again, there was no one there. That was the last time something like that happened, but the activity continued. So like I mentioned, my sister had been acting very weird since the time we moved in. Now, I don't know if that has to do with the apartment or if it has something to do with the guy she was seeing, but I remember one day, my sister and I were taking care of my two baby brothers while my mom and stepdad were at work. We were sitting down at the kitchen table coloring and drawing. Not to sound muy acá, but I am a very talented artist. At this time, it is when I started to do portraits, so my baby brother would always make me draw him cartoon characters and other silly stuff. I remember looking over at my sister's drawings, and they were disturbing. I saw one drawing where it was a mountain and a black figure at the top with a red face, and another of just a black face with no eyes. As I was looking at it, I was moving my body more to her side to see more drawings. And when she noticed, she slapped both hands, covering them up. She looked at me as if I ripped or ruined one of her drawings, but all I did was just look at them. She didn't say anything, but she just kept looking at me with this sinister look on her face. She would honestly scare me so much now that I remember. That same week, we were drawing again. And again, she would draw these creepy, disturbing pictures. And when she would catch me looking at them, she would cover them and look at me for literally 5-10 minutes straight, until one day I told her she was creepy and crazy. She ripped my necklace off my neck. My cross necklace. I just sat there, silent, thinking, what the heck is wrong with her? Well, that same week on Saturday, my mom took my sister and my brothers to the pulga. I had told my mom I wasn't feeling good, so she let me stay home. I was fine. I just wanted to know if my sister was hiding anything, and I also wanted to look more at her drawings. I went to her cajon and didn't find anything. Nothing under her bed or under her mattress, nothing in the closet or in her shoes, nothing. It was until I opened her cajon once more and saw a small hole on the side. I knocked on the inside of the cajon and I could feel how thin it was, so I put my pinky through and lifted up the bottom board. I saw more disturbing things. Endless creepy drawings and a bunch of ripped pieces of paper with words that weren't even in English or in Spanish. I saw a hairball on one corner, which that wasn't even the weirdest thing. I found a necklace with a red heart. I picked it up and I saw that there was something red inside it. At first, I thought it was paint or some glitter, but it wasn't a bright red. It was a dark black red, almost like it was blood. While looking at it, I got such a bad headache, and I felt as if I was going to fall on the floor. When I put the necklace down, my headache went away. I didn't want to touch anything else, but I saw a small brown journal. I opened it to the first page, and I quickly shut it. What I saw was a bunch of demonic symbols, like the star with a circle around it, and also the triangle ones and more. I was so disturbed that I wanted to throw up. I knew what they were and what they meant because we would watch a lot of horror movies, but seeing them in person in my sister's cajon was just disturbing. I can honestly go on forever about how weird she was acting, but I'm going to skip to a couple nights after. It was late at night and we were all in bed. There were 2 bunk beds in our room. My brother and I, who was 4 at the time, would sleep on the top, and my sister and my baby brother, who was 1 year old, would sleep on the bottom. This night, my mom was laying down with my baby brother on his bed. She was talking on the phone with my grandma while giving my baby brother his bottle. I was about to fall asleep when my brother started crying that he wanted a titi, his bottle. Yes, my brother would still drink milk in a bottle because he wanted to be treated like a baby too. So my mom told my sister to make him a bottle, but my sister said, ¿Por qué yo? Dile a tu otra hija. So my mom told me, and I was like, ugh, fine. I got up, kicking the covers, and climbed down the steps. When I get to the bottom step, my mom gets up and says, Ay, nunca quieren hacer nada. I was like, what? No, I just came down. She said, no, I'll go do it. Go back to sleep. I replied, no, I already got up, so I'm going. Well, we both went. We walked into the dark hallway and closed the door behind us. We proceeded to just walk in the dark towards the kitchen. While walking, I hear tap, 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 footsteps behind us. Junior, vete a dormir, ahorita te traigo la titi, my mom said. And again, tap, 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 footsteps behind us all the way until we reached the kitchen. Seconds before my mom flickered the lights on. Again, she said, Junior, ya te dije. She didn't even finish her sentence because there was no one there. We would have clearly seen him walking or running back to the room, but no, there was no one there. My mom and I just looked at each other. We stayed in the kitchen and just made his bottle, warmed it up in the microwave, and we didn't even take 3 minutes. When we got to the room, Junior was already asleep. My mom asked my sister if he had gotten up, and she said no. He just kept crying, and I told him to go to sleep. And indeed, he was asleep. I still remember hearing those footsteps behind us like it was yesterday, and even feeling the warmth or energy of someone walking behind me. Till this day, it still gives me the creeps. But now, my mom didn't even notice my sister acting weird until the day she didn't want to go to church. She would tell my mom that she didn't want to go because she would feel headaches and feel really sick. My mom didn't care and would tell her, no te hagas, vamos. Well, this specific day, we were getting ready for church, and again, my sister didn't want to go. But instead of arguing with my mom, she started throwing things around and told my mom that if she made her go, she would herself. My mom was so mad. She got my sister's phone and threw it at the wall. It was completely cracked and broken. My sister was shook. My mom told her that if she threatened her one more time, she would be out of the house. My sister looked at her with an evil smile and locked herself in the room. My mom wasn't having it and just let her stay home. But that same day, something happened. Around the time we got home, my mom went into the shower right after. After like 20 minutes, I heard her scream all of our names. My little brother and I rushed to the restroom. She was very mad and asked us who put our hands on the mirror. I looked at the mirror and there was 2 foggy hands upside down at the very top. The hands were small but long. She made all of us climb up onto the side of the sink and turn our hands upside down and measure them. Me thinking, how can someone possibly put both of their hands on the mirror upside down? Well, anyways, my hands were a bit smaller to be it. My brothers were very small and my sister's hands were around the same size, but the fingers on the mirror were just too skinny and pointy. I could see my mom's frustration on her face, knowing it wasn't any of us. But I also noticed my sister smiling while going to the room. And I think my mom noticed it too. The next morning, again, something happened. I wasn't there, but my mom told me she had gotten back into her bed after dropping us off at school. She said she was sleeping on her side, facing the right side of the room. She turned around and saw my stepdad laying on his side facing the left. She said she shook him and told him, "Amor, se te va a hacer tarde." She said he didn't move, but that she just turned back around. Minutes later, her phone rang. It was my stepdad. He was calling to make sure we had all got into school. My mom said she was terrified to turn around, but when she did, no one was there. I asked if maybe she was dreaming or imagining it, but she said no. When I pushed him and pressed down on his side, he laughed. Oh my goodness. My mom was so scared. She would ask me to stay up with her or be with her in the kitchen until she went to bed, because it started to be an everyday thing where she would hear footsteps or she could feel someone behind her breathing on her neck. Oh, she was washing the dishes. My mom didn't know what else to do but to ask someone in church for help. She told La Hermana what was going on and that she thinks it has something to do with my sister. Well, a couple days later, she invited La Hermana over for dinner so she could explain more of the things going on. Little did I know this was going to be one of my worst memories. We ate and we talked, and after that, we started to pray. I forgot to mention, my grandma was visiting at that time. We gathered in a circle, and I remember my grandma holding my left hand and my sister holding my right. We started to pray, and not long after, I felt my right hand going numb. My sister was squeezing my hand so hard that I opened my eyes and pulled away. I looked at her, and her eyes were white. White. La Hermana and her husband were in disbelief. I remember running behind my mom, covering my face. My sister started to scream and talk in a demonic voice. I don't remember much of what was being said. All I remember is screaming and me crying. I looked up at my sister and she was sitting at the kitchen table with everyone surrounding her. Everything was silent. And then she growled. She growled like a dog and started choking and spitting blood out of her mouth. I still remember looking at her hands scratching the table, these old long fingernails scratching against the wood. I knew those weren't my sister's hands, but they were. She was spitting out blood for what seemed like a very long time. Things came out of her mouth. I don't know what they were, but they sounded like tornillos because of the noise it made when it hit the table. I couldn't look at it, but I felt I had to. I had looked up once again and I saw that my sister was just staring at everyone in a confused way. She wiped the blood off her mouth and seemed very confused. She started crying and went for my mom and hugged her. The hermana and her husband went home about an hour later. My sister was in the room and I was in the kitchen with my mom. My mom really said Go to sleep, mija. Ya es tarde. Ugh, what? Go to sleep? Daisy, she really wanted me to go to sleep in the same room with my sister. I told her, hell no, I'm not sleeping with her. She hugged me and said everything was fine and that my sister wasn't going to hurt me and that she was all better now. Well, I remember walking to the room when I heard my sister screaming. My mom ran into our room and my sister was screaming and crying. He's here, he's here, he's in the room. Ama, ya lo miré, he's in the room. I was standing at the side of the door, scared from her screaming. There was no one in the room. My mom had to stay in the room and sleep with her until she fell asleep. After my sister fell asleep, my mom came to kiss me goodnight. She told me everything was going to be better now. And I thought so too. But little did we know, that was just the beginning. So it's Dia de los Muertos back in 2017. As we traditionally do, my family and I had our altar, ofrendas, etc. Some families tend to go to the cemetery to hang out with their loved ones and take them ofrendas. My family usually doesn't do that, but this year was the exception. Side note, I still feel so guilty since I was the one that had the idea of going and convinced all my cousins and sister to go because I was very into spooky stuff at the time. So my sister, my little brother, 4 of my cousins, and I get to the cemetery after a 10-15-minute walk. We all separated in groups of 2 and went to visit different graves. Everything seemed normal until it was time to go back home. I was waiting for them outside the cemetery when all of a sudden I saw through my peripheral vision a white shadow. It sorta looked like a dog run by. And then I saw my sister running right behind it. She was throwing up. All of us confused followed her to see if she was okay. She said she was, but when we got back home, things got bad. As soon as we entered the house, she felt very lightheaded, nauseous, and she said she had a strong feeling something wasn't right. At this point, my cousins and I knew something was up, but decided to not say anything to our parents due to fear of getting us in trouble. We had a feeling it was something to do with the paranormal, so we cleansed her with an egg. Usually, most of the time it works, but this time, for the first time in my life, the egg cleanse wasn't enough. After analyzing the situation, my best option was to tell my mom, because I was desperate since my sister didn't seem to get any better. As a matter of fact, she kept getting worse. It was like she was high, out of her mind. She really wasn't there. So after I told my mom, we had my sister lay down and we literally tried everything. We gave her medicine, we did multiple energy cleanses with eggs, rosemary, olive tree branches. These are all methods I learned from my great-grandma, as she was a healer. Nothing worked. We were worried and frustrated we couldn't do anything. Keep in mind, this happened from 10 p.m. 3 a.m., so obviously no hospital or clinic was open, especially in the rural areas of Mexico. After 1 hour of trying, we stopped and all we had left was to pray. There was a point where I was alone in the room with my sister. She was asleep but crying a lot to the point she was out of breath. When out of nowhere, she woke up, stopped crying, and just sat down calmly and told me, "I know what it is. It's him. He wants to come back here with me. He's sad his family is forgetting about him. That's why he wants to come back. But I know what to do. You have to light a candle for him and pray." My mom ran to the room after hearing my sister talk, and she told my sister to tell the guy that he didn't belong here. He needed to go back to where he came from. After that, my sister went back to sleep, so I got the candle, sat next to her, and started praying for that man. My sister woke up again, and she looked at me like I'm crazy. "What are you doing? Are you trying to burn me?" My sister said it like nothing had happened. When I heard her say that, my heart dropped, because who the heck was I talking to earlier? as if she didn't remember anything. The next morning, we were hoping my sister would be okay by now, but unfortunately, she wasn't. She still had the same symptoms: lightheaded, nausea, bad gut feeling, strong body aches, feeling extremely tired. So we decided to take her to my grandma's house where my aunt lives, since she's a healer. She comprehends more of these kinds of topics, of course. She does this for a living. As soon as she looked at my sister literally trying so hard to not pass out, she knew something was wrong. My mom, my aunt, and my sister went into a room. My aunt didn't let anyone be in the room because she said it was dangerous for us. Well, of what my mom described, she pretty much performed an exorcism. She used specific essential oils and herbs, and she had a rosario in her hand and prayed with such an intensity that my mom has never experienced it before. As she was praying, my sister seemed to get extremely uncomfortable and was falling asleep. And after she was done praying, my sister just slept for hours and then woke up fine. Meaning, whatever my aunt did finally worked. I forgot to mention 3 important things. 1. Before we went to the cemetery, one of my other aunts gave us all ruda to put in our pockets for protection. The only one that didn't have ruda was my sister. 2. My sister had a mark on her ankle. It looked similar to a rash or a first-degree burn. It was shaped like a hand with long fingers. And number 3, one of my cousins was born with the gift of seeing spirits, and she claimed to see a little boy running around the cemetery but didn't say anything because she did not want to freak us out. And also, I want to make it clear, I am aware and take accountability. I was kind of responsible for this because I was the one that convinced everyone to go. But I already apologized to my sister. She didn't really mind because she doesn't remember much. She said it's similar to when you black out. All she claims to remember is feeling extremely tired. Thank you so much for reading my story. Hello Daisy, let me introduce myself. My name is Lirea. This event took place in the year 2010. I was in my early to mid 20s, living with my son's father and his parents in the city of Sun Valley, California. The house had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a long driveway with a beautiful big backyard. Around this time, our son was 3 years old, and I have to say that life was pretty calm. So I thought. But one night, I remember it being late. I want to say it was around 11 p.m., 12 a.m. My son was staying with his grandma's, my mom, for the night. It was on a weekday. My son's father, who was working, would get off between those hours, so I decided to stay up and wait for him. At first, I was in the living room watching some TV. Then I decided to go to my bedroom. As soon as I walked into my bedroom, out of nowhere, I got this strange feeling. This off, creepy feeling that I can't even describe till this day. It felt dark and cold. It instantly covered my entire body with goosebumps and shocked my soul with fear. It felt like an icebox in my bedroom. I said to myself, yikes, I need to close up and lock my window. As I was walking towards the window, I said to myself, wait a minute. I never leave the window open, especially at night. It's always closed and only open in the mornings and afternoon. And of course, I was right. My window was closed and locked. The AC was off too. I said, it's not even cold outside. Why does the room feel like an icebox? And only in my room at that. But I ignored it. So the next day came. My son's father and I were in our bedroom just adoring our baby boy. He was playing with his toys, but I remember there was this one particular piano toy that he had that made these cute little melody sounds. It would only sing the ABCs, then back to a melody. It would